There comes a point in life when you realize you're tired of knowing what you need to do, but never actually doing it. You know you should take care of your mind, improve your discipline, abandon old habits and build new ones, but something invisible keeps holding you back. It's not a lack of desire. It's not a lack of intelligence. It feels like there's a transparent wall between who you are and who you could be, yet that wall seems impossible to break through. And this is exactly the moment when many people stop, give up, or start believing that something is wrong with them. What they don't know is that this moment is actually the beginning of every real transformation. Every person who ever walked a path of wisdom, Japanese masters, ancient philosophers, modern scientists, faced this same inner emptiness. Not the emptiness of ordinary discouragement, but the kind that appears when you look at your life and realize you've been running on autopilot. You wake up, work, handle obligations, repeat the same routines, but something inside you whispers that there is more. Before we go deeper, I need to ask you something. If what you're hearing resonates with you, if you feel that this message touches a part of you that's been ignored, if it feels like you finally found content that speaks to your real internal struggle, then subscribe to the Kokoro channel. Here, you will always find teachings that treat you not as someone lost, but as someone awakening. You are part of a group that refuses to live on the surface and seeks knowledge that creates real change. Subscribing isn't just a click, it's a commitment to yourself. Now, let's go straight to the core of the problem. The reason you struggle to take the first step is rooted in an internal conflict most people never notice. Inside you, there is a side that wants to grow, learn, and evolve. That side imagines a better version of yourself. It feels enthusiasm. It sees possibilities. But there is also a side conditioned to avoid any kind of pain. That side fears discomfort, effort, and the possibility of failure. When these two forces collide, you freeze, and the force that wins is always the older one, the side programmed to keep you safe, even if safe means stuck. This conflict does not only happen to you, it happens to everyone with big dreams but small habits. You want to learn something new but remain trapped in your old routines. You want to change your body but repeat the same behaviors. You want discipline, yet you wake up tired, unfocused, and without direction. The more you try to force yourself, the more it feels like your body refuses to cooperate. It's as if an invisible resistance stands between you and every intention, and that resistance is real, but it is not invincible. The first step to overcoming it is understanding that willpower is not an infinite resource. It drains quickly. If you rely on it alone, you will fail. Always. Eastern masters taught that discipline is not built through force, but through clarity. You do not defeat your resistance by fighting it head-on. You defeat it by outsmarting it. True discipline is not born from extreme effort. It is born from simplicity, from small movement, from actions that are too easy for the mind to reject. That's why ancient teachers insisted that the path of transformation is not about changing everything at once, but about changing one thing at a time until your identity naturally shifts. There is a common myth in modern thinking that big changes require big actions. That's not true. Both behavioral science and Eastern philosophy agree on something essential. What changes your life is not intensity. It is consistency. If you try to fix everything in one dramatic burst of motivation, your energy burns out. But if you build small, repeated actions, the habit forms and begins working for you. And when the habit works for you, your life changes even on the days when you don't feel your best. The problem is that most people never get past that first phase. They want instant results, or they believe they need to feel motivated to act. But that's a trap. Motivation comes and goes. Discipline stays. And discipline doesn't depend on how you feel. It depends on what you repeat. If you're waiting for courage before acting, you're already behind. Courage does not appear before action. It appears during action. This is the shift that changes everything. You act to create courage, not the other way around. As long as you wait for the right moment, your brain interprets the task as dangerous and increases your resistance. But when you start, just start, even for 2 minutes, your mind learns that the task is not a threat. The resistance drops, the energy rises, and movement becomes easier. This is the beginning of the journey we'll deepen in the next chapters. How to reprogram your mind so action becomes natural instead of painful. How to break the invisible wall keeping you in the same cycle. And how to build an identity strong enough to sustain your biggest goals. But before we move on, I want you to mark your presence here. If you watched until the end of this first chapter, comment, "I'm ready to break the barrier." When you start observing your behavior honestly, you notice something important. Most of your difficulty doesn't come from the tasks themselves, but from the stories your mind creates about them. Your mind exaggerates, amplifies, distorts, and turns simple actions into overwhelming mountains. And it doesn't do this because you are weak or incapable. It does it because the human brain evolved to conserve energy at all costs. Anything that demands extra effort is automatically labeled as a threat. It doesn't matter if the task is going to the gym, opening a book, preparing a healthy meal, or sitting down to work. Your mind reacts as if these actions endanger your survival. But here is the truth most people never hear. Resistance can be weakened. It can be reshaped. It can be trained. You are not meant to obey your resistance. You are meant to understand it. When you recognize that resistance is simply an outdated survival instinct, it loses a part of its power. The moment you see it not as a personal flaw, but as a mental mechanism, you stop taking it as a verdict and start taking it as a signal. This is why discomfort becomes essential. Discomfort is not your enemy, it is your compass. Every place in your life where discomfort appears is a doorway to growth. If studying makes you uncomfortable, that is exactly where development waits. If waking up early feels painful, that's where discipline grows. If starting a new skill feels frustrating, that is where confidence is built. Discomfort exposes the gap between who you are and who you can become. And maturity begins when you no longer run away from this gap, but learn to walk through it. To do that, you need to understand the most important psychological concept in the journey of discipline: friction. Friction is the force that stops movement before it begins. It is not the 2 hours of study that feel heavy. It is the moment of sitting down. It is not the entire workout that feels impossible. It is tying your shoelaces. It is not organizing your house that overwhelms you. It is the first gesture of picking up one item. The resistance is concentrated at the beginning. Once you start, everything becomes easier. This is why ancient Japanese masters taught that the key to discipline is reducing the distance between you and the first step. Not increasing motivation, not forcing willpower, reducing distance. And this is where the conflict becomes deeper. You are not only fighting old habits, you are fighting an old identity. Every time you try to build a new habit, you collide with what you believe about yourself. If you've always seen yourself as someone who quits easily, your mind will try to confirm that belief. If you believe you lack focus, your behavior will follow that script. If you believe you are inconsistent, your habits will act accordingly. Identity shapes behavior more than desire ever will. So how do you change identity? Not through dramatic decisions, but through small evidence repeated daily. Each small action you complete is a vote for the person you want to become. Each simple behavior completed despite resistance rewrites a piece of your narrative. Each small victory becomes a seed planted inside your mind, creating a new internal pattern. Identity is not built by wanting. Identity is built by doing, and doing begins small. As you walk through this process, you will fall. You will skip days. You will break routines. And this is where most people give up. They think a setback proves they're not capable. But in Eastern traditions, falling is part of the training. Falling is not failure, it is instruction. There is no discipline without returning. There is no mastery without repetition. There is no progress without imperfection. The difference between people who evolve and people who remain stuck is not talent or motivation. It is the ability to return quickly. This ability, returning even when discouraged, returning even when tired, returning even when you don't believe in yourself, is the real foundation of discipline. When you master the art of returning, you stop fearing failure. You stop fearing inconsistency. You stop fearing bad days. Because you know you can always come back. And when you are no longer afraid of falling, you finally learn how to walk. At this stage, Transformation becomes practical. You begin to understand that your mind responds to environment as much as it responds to intention. If your environment works against you, discipline becomes a battle. But if your environment works for you, discipline becomes natural. This is why you must build a life that supports the person you want to become. If you want to study more, create a space that invites study. If you want to eat better, prepare your environment for better choices. If you want to be more focused, remove what scatters your attention. You shape your environment, and your environment shapes you back. Eventually, you discover a deeper truth. Discipline is not an internal fight. Discipline is a system. When your environment, your habits, and your identity align, discipline happens almost on its own. What used to feel like a battle becomes routine. What felt heavy becomes normal. What felt impossible becomes familiar. You stop forcing change and start embodying it. This chapter is the heart of the entire process. It is where you recognize the conflict inside you, but also where you realize this conflict is solvable. The moment you understand resistance, environment, and identity, you hold the keys to transformation. Reaching this stage of the journey means something fundamental has already shifted inside you. Even if it's subtle, even if it's quiet, a new mental space has begun to open. It's as if you can finally see your life not only through urgency and fatigue, but through intention and direction. You've understood the invisible barrier, you've identified the internal conflict, and now you arrive at the part where understanding must turn into action. Most people stop right here. They learn, they reflect, they agree, but they never apply. And only application transforms knowledge into identity. That is why this final chapter is not about motivation. It is about resolution. And resolution is what turns a path into a way of living. The first resolution is simple but essential. You no longer depend on feeling ready to act. Readiness is unstable. Motivation rises and falls like the weather. If you build your life on emotion, your life becomes unpredictable. True stability comes when you act regardless of how you feel. This does not make you insensitive. It makes you sovereign. It means you no longer hand over your direction to your moods. Ancient masters called this self-governance. To govern yourself is not to suppress emotion, but to act from a place deeper than emotion. When your actions serve your principles, not your impulses, your life begins to follow a straight line toward what matters most. The second resolution is understanding that small daily habits shape the future in ways motivation never could. Modern culture romanticizes sudden transformation, big breakthroughs, radical changes, dramatic turning points. But the people who actually transform their lives do so through consistent rituals, not extreme routines, not heroic discipline, simple, repeatable rituals. These rituals are the foundation of identity because they shape the kind of person you become. A habit is not just a behavior, it is a statement of identity. Every day you follow a small habit, you reinforce the architecture of the person you're building. The third resolution is clarity. You no longer allow your mind to drown in endless tasks, distractions, and noise. A mind without clarity becomes scattered, and a scattered mind can't build discipline. Discipline is not just the ability to execute. It is the ability to decide what is essential and to let go of what is not. When you know what matters, action becomes natural. When everything matters, nothing gets done. Clarity is the force that organizes your will. Clarity is the compass of discipline. The fourth resolution is letting go of perfection. Perfection is the greatest enemy of progress. It convinces you that conditions must be ideal, that you must feel confident, that you must already know what you're doing. But perfection is a form of fear. It's fear dressed as standards. It tells you to wait. It tells you tomorrow will be better. It tells you that a different version of yourself, one that magically appears later, will handle things. But that version never arrives. The only version of you that can build discipline is the one you are today, with all your flaws, doubts, and imperfections. You do not wait for confidence to begin. Confidence grows as you begin. The fifth resolution is mastering the art of returning. Returning is the most important skill in the entire journey. Anyone can follow a habit on a good day. Anyone can feel motivated when life is comfortable, but only people who have learned to return can transform themselves. Return after missing a day. Return after breaking a routine. Return after falling back into old patterns. Eastern masters taught that a path is not defined by how few times you fall, but by how many times you rise. When returning becomes natural, failure loses its power. You stop seeing mistakes as identity and start seeing them as moments. And moments pass. The sixth resolution is balancing patience and urgency. Transformation requires time, but time means nothing if you do nothing with it. Patience tells you not to rush the process. Urgency tells you not to waste it. When these two forces work together, you move steadily, without panic and without delay. You understand that improvement is not a race, but also not something you can postpone forever. You start acting today, knowing that results will come tomorrow. This is the balance that creates sustainable discipline. The seventh resolution is recognizing that discipline is not strict control but internal harmony. The word discipline comes from disciple, one who learns. Discipline is not punishment, it is alignment. When your habits reflect your values, discipline stops being a battle and becomes a natural expression of who you are. You don't force yourself to do what aligns with your true self. You simply follow your nature. The problem is that most people never discover their true nature because they are too distracted to listen. But once you create silence inside, discipline emerges quietly. The eighth resolution is building a life that supports the person you want to become. Transformation is impossible when your environment fights against you. If your surroundings are chaotic, your mind becomes chaotic. If you live surrounded by distractions, your attention fractures. If your life is filled with noise, your discipline evaporates. You must build a structure that sustains your intention, spaces that promote focus, habits that support growth, routines that reduce friction. Transformation is not just about changing yourself. It is about changing the world around you so it becomes fertile ground for your identity. The ninth resolution is embracing full responsibility. Responsibility is not blame. Responsibility is power. It means owning your path. It means accepting that no one will walk for you. The world may offer knowledge, tools, teachers, and opportunities, but only you can take the steps. When you stop waiting for the ideal moment, the perfect plan, or permission from others, you realize something liberating. Nothing stands between you and the person you want to become except your willingness to begin. The 10th resolution is understanding that you have already begun. Even if the change feels small, even if the progress feels quiet, even if the steps seem insignificant, you have already stepped out of the old cycle. Real transformation rarely feels dramatic at the beginning. It feels like clarity. It feels like awareness. It feels like recognizing patterns you never noticed before. These early signs are the first proof that your identity is shifting.